Hey guys, good morning. So new camera, a lot better results. It's a front-facing camera, so it's still a little bit pixelated, but that's okay. Subwoofers. This is such a subject that seems to be so sensitive with a lot of people. So I have to be a little bit calm with my voice. It's early in the morning. I was just in the group. I don't know why it's like a shit magnet to me when you go to these audiophile groups on Facebook and just scroll through the nonsense that's out there. And I came across a post which I come across regularly, and it's one of those posts that usually gets put out by people that really don't understand much about speaker design. So I wound up in a discussion with a certain person, basically telling me that hi-fi speakers do not need subwoofers, but home theater speakers need subwoofers. Well, to put this out there, and I'm going to link it to this particular person, hi-fi speakers and home theater speakers, there's really no difference between the two. It's the same thing when you see studio monitors on speakers. That doesn't mean that they're studio monitors. There's a lot of marketing fluff going on in that particular area, especially when you have older speakers back in the say late 90s 2000s, when home theater became more of a prominent thing to promote. You had a lot of speakers being dubbed that way. A nice example would be, for instance, Boston Acoustics behind me. Now, this speaker is different, but the VR series, the video reference series, the VRM series, the video reference monitor series, that did not mean that they were inherently different from a hi-fi speaker. I mean, how many speakers do you know of that have the brand or have been dubbed Hi-Fi XX model? This is the Hi-Fi XX model loudspeaker. Also, to come back on the core of this, subwoofers are most definitely, almost in any system, a welcome addition. And to explain this, even back in the day, when you look at Klipsch, JBL, Tannoy, there were tons of speakers that had huge 12-inch to 15-inch woofers. And people go like, well, that's proof in the pudding, right? It doesn't need subwoofers. That's hi-fi. No, those speakers come from an era where subwoofers were not prominent yet. Subwoofers are not as old as you think they are. Proper subwoofers. I'm not talking about passive subwoofers that yangled along with your speakers, but active subwoofers. That is, I would say, a 70s thing, a 70s, later 80s thing, where it really became a more of a staple thing to see in a system. A very good example of such system, which was quite unique and made the brand big, is the Servostatic one of Infinity. Going back to my other brand, which I'm a huge fan of, and that was in 68, 69, but it was a unique thing to see. An 18-inch bass commode is what they call it. They didn't call it a subwoofer, with an active servo controller or a servo amplifier. That was, oh my God, nobody's ever seen that before. Nobody's ever heard that before. A bass commode that hits 18 hertz or 17 hertz in room. So that was not common. Also, if you look up, I had the Klipsch La Scala, for instance, which is a very famous Klipsch speaker, I would argue, from back in that day. And it had a huge 15-inch behind that folded horn, but they rolled off at about 50 hertz. The same thing with JBL. So you had the big 18 inches, they roll off at about 30, 35 hertz. That's where they kind of started to roll off. That's not sub low. I think that people confuse subwoofers with their own mindset of, oh, it's a boombox. So now I have a boombox added to my system, and only at home theater that has a place. They're not boomboxes. They're only boomboxes because you don't know how to set one up properly. Anyone who's ever used a subwoofer before knows that there's, well, I know it's kind of weird, guys, but there's controls on these things, and you need to dial that in. Also, what I see, and it's a common mistake with people that have subwoofers, they run their normal speakers still on a full range capacity. Passive loudspeakers, the speaker like this, right, or grab any loudspeaker, floor standard, you tap out usually around 35 hertz ish. That's where they start to roll off pretty steep. That's also your room. I totally agree with you, but that's where a subwoofer can make the difference. So that lower octave, that's what that is for. It gives you that little bit more fleshed out dynamics on the bottom end where your passive system is dropping off. But it also requires proper placement, proper understanding of what you're playing with, phase/time alignment. That's why you have phase controls on a subwoofer. A lot of people ignore that little magic switch, and I don't understand, because if you play with it, you can actually really fine tune that woofer in to get just a little bit more tighter response out of it. So um, I know that some systems don't require it. And here, putting a subwoofer in here is not needed. That's a different thing. But could it benefit a system? Yes, it could. If I had a little bit more space, most definitely it could. But there you have it, guys. That's kind of my take on subwoofers. Don't just say that it's a boombox or it's a useless or it's tainting my hi-fi sound. It really doesn't. It actually can aid a lot to your experience in audio. It can really add some more fleshing and more dynamic flash, I call it, in the bottom end of your speakers, where your speakers are kind of starting to struggle a little bit. That's where a subwoofer can come in and give you a little bit more oomph. Also, it can help you with standing waves. When you have standing waves in the room, and anybody has them, it's not a matter of maybe I have them. You do have them. However, it doesn't mean it occurs in your listening spot if you place your speakers properly. But most people are restrained in space as well. They have their speakers further back, or they can't go into the middle of the room with it like I do here. These are about 4 foot away from the back walls. You wouldn't say it, but they are. And that helps a lot. But some guys, they just can't do it. They can only spare a foot or a foot and a half, and then they get a complete null at where they're sitting at, say, 60 hertz or 70 hertz. That's where a subwoofer can aid you. It can mitigate those issues relatively easily. Also, just quickly on this subwoofer placement, you don't have to have a subwoofer per se with the front of your system. They can go sideways as well. They can go in a corner as well. You can have one there and one there in the corner, offsetting it. Quad setups are not uncommon either. They take space for sure, but they most definitely can benefit you. And this whole nonsense of their boom boxes and they're useless, and because you tried it and you were not able to tune one in, that does not mean that is ultimately how subwoofers operate. That is just an operator error. That's what we call that. Anyways, I wanted to put this video out there, and guys, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to. There's more stuff coming. I think I want to go over some vintage here. I have this Moran set up here. I want to do that next. And thank you for watching, guys.